So 30 years after Heat, the one thing that I've wanted to talk about since then, for me, one of the most interesting aspects of Heat, but all of your work, I think of it like the classical themes. I would almost say like the existential context of it. And I'm wondering when because I also, while we were sitting waiting, I pulled 2 books from your bookshelf. I hope you don't mind. One is Edward Hopper, and the other is Bertolt Brecht. And Edward Hopper, especially the sort of like the negative space, the use of the void.
Yeah, exactly.
And in Heat, the existential subtext. To what extent were you aware of that, and was that your intention when you were writing it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the domain in which these characters dwell when you posit that both of them are the only fully conscious people in the movie. That was the artifice. That, you know, imagine that you're doing a movie in which the only 2 people who are totally tuned in, zero self-deception, completely understand the you know, this microscopically short piece of existence that we have, and how do I get everything I can in life. That kind of basic existential Sartre reality check. The only 2 people who are totally self-aware are Neil and Hannah, and
the context of it, this beautiful, almost sort of like the desolate void that they inhabit, as almost sort of like the existential mise-en-scène.
No, it's real. I mean, I think about it in exactly the same terms. I mean, I was looking for the liminal spaces, in Los Angeles, and they existed in 1995. I don't know that they existed now. I mean, you could go to Terminal Island, half of it was unincorporated, and in the unincorporated part, you found an illegal abattoir, found a cockfighting arena, all of which we shot. All of which was real. Chop shop where they're cutting up stolen cars, some camper shells with some strange people wandering around, and then in the middle of it rides this cowboy, of not the Western cowboy, but a vaquero with a vaquero saddle. Yeah. And this is on a location scout. So all these people immediately get cast and put into the movie. But it was. You know, that world that you travel through, that becomes kind of a twilight zone. But it's mostly based on experience, in the sense that you're not just sitting in a room making it up. Sitting in a room in LA and making it up. And that, you know, for probably 8 or 9 months, I went out at least one night a week from about 9 p.m. to 2 or 3 a.m. with a plainclothes commander in LAPD, and we were just randomly answering calls, and it took us all over the city, from Long Beach to Pacoima, you name it. I mean, murder scenes, and so the city had become kind of a twilight zone, if you like. And to me, that was the ideal plane to tell the story of these 2 characters, because it elevated what it was about and the empathetic connection I could try to get into their lives, and try to expose the interiority of Neil McCauley's life and Hannah's life. And that's where your music comes in, because it is, New Dawn fades, and God moving over the face of the water at the end. How that music, how those cues work, that's why I was so attracted to everything that you were doing. I usually want to have a sense of what the music's going to be before I shoot the film, not after, because sometimes it could become a internal modular for emotions. Like this film, if I listen to this piece of music, it reminds me of what I have to achieve in terms of getting you inside, subjectifying the experience of your intake of Neil McCauley. How I want you to connect with him, how interior I want to get. And so I was listening to a lot of your music at the time, and so it was a natural that it enhanced the ability to bring audience into the interior of Neil McCauley, the interior of Vincent Hanna, and get a feeling for that landscape or the weather inside of him. And in the case of Neil McCauley, the De Niro character, it was very important because, like, when I use New Dawn Fades, and you feel the longing, you know, of a guy who's living in emotional solitude because he has some plan that true life is going to begin in Fiji after he's scored, and so he's reduced to an ascetic minimalism to reduce risk. It's all functional, okay, and professional, but inside of him there's this longing and an ache, you know, and he's going to resist having contact with her, and then he returns to the world of his of professional crime and this disciplined you know, kind of projection of what he's trying to do. But and he leaves. He basically abandons her. But this is before he calls her back. So I mean, through accessing those emotional states for the audience, you know, or I'm impacting upon the audience, trying to impact upon the audience to bring them into that emotional state. You know, to me, it's your music worked that way. Now, it's false to separate the music from the visual, from the performance to where you are in the story, because they're not separate. They're all integrated. Even though it's architected, you're trying to architect what one side of your brain was, you know, what's going to be just a subjective set of feelings, you know, and you know. But I think that the depth with which we connect to these characters is why the film, you know, fortunately is sustained in cultural memory, because if you can identify, if I was telling myself this when I was making the film, if I can identify with these characters that deeply, the characters themselves are counterpoint. You know, it's this classical counterpoint. They or you know, dialectic. They both have components within them that are exactly 180 degrees opposite. Neil McCauley is a sociopath. Vincent Hanna, Al Pacino, is not, and yet the two of them view the world the same way. Total accountability, total awareness of everything, of their own failures. They talk to themselves. They have dialogue with themselves. They self-modulate, both of these guys. So you have the combination of this rapport, where they're, you know, the only two people like each other on the planet, and there's also lethal intent, and one's going to kill the other. And that duality is the counterpoint. Now it's not. I mean, you're using the analogy of music. You know, I mean, or maybe it's a dialectic. I mean, it's not like, I don't know, it's not like some Thomas Tallis 40-part motet or something. It's the two of them. But that's the, you know, that fugue-like state we're in at the end of the film, where we're, you know, you're 100% wanting to have Neil McCauley leave and get away. You're 100% with Al Pacino chasing Neil McCauley.
You know, the concept of Satori? You know, Satori, like instant enlightenment.
Right.
And when you were talking about like these self-actualized characters, but in most spiritual disciplines, like there's that goal of like reaching enlightenment, reaching self-actualization, but there's no discussion of the context in which it happens. So like if you reach full awareness and enlightenment, but you're in an utterly unevolved, broken world, how do you respond? You know, and suddenly that helped me to understand the two characters more. Like that idea of like they are self-actualized, they are aware, but the environment they're in is so broken and so inimical to human, you know, human enlightenment.
But they accept the world as broken. They accept the world as this chaotic, vast place with of disorder and disharmony, in which, you know, I have X number, this limited amount of time to experience what I want to experience. Now, one thing I'm not talking about is that this is based on a true story, and it was, I mean, it was just the essence of the counterpoint. It was a friend of a guy I knew very well named Charlie Adamson, was a detective in Chicago, and killed the real Neil McCauley in Chicago in 1963. And he started telling me about his relationship with Neil, and you know, and he spoke about him with fondness and a tremendous respect and understanding of who he was, and that they were very, very similar in their outlook and their awareness of life. There was no, you know, you know, and he spoke about him fondly, and they. Charlie was dropping off his cleaning on Clark Street in Chicago. And as he was dropping it off, at this point he had been surveilling Macaulay's crew. Macaulay had tripped to the fact that the Central Intelligence Unit of the Chicago Police Department was on him, and he had found out who Adamson was. Macaulay was going into the Bell and Deli for a cup of coffee, and they bumped into each other, and they looked off the top. Adamson reached for his gun. Macaulay is about to get back in the car or something, and then Adamson says, "Let me buy you a cup of coffee." And they go into the Belton Deli, which is no longer there, and they sit down and have a cup of coffee. And this is where they first actually connect. And so that, you know, that counterpoint, the dialectic
aspect of it, yeah, and it's like that complicated, like the strength and vulnerability, the contempt and the connection, you know, I mean, for so many reasons, that's why 30 years later, people revere your film.
Yeah. Well, one thing we haven't talked about that's absolutely important to get on record is, when we were finishing Heat, we were, the studio said, "Can you get this ready for Christmas?" Which is 16 weeks away. Normally a picture of that scale, 2 hours and 45 minutes, you'd take about 32 weeks of post. And I said, let me wait till I get about 6 weeks in to the editing, and if the story structure's in good shape, I'll tell you. And I said, yes, we could. So then we had 16 weeks to finish the movie. So we were working absolutely around the clock, and with 4 editors and assistant editors conforming the film, because we weren't, you know, we were on a light work system, which, and so I would come in at all kinds of crazy hours. And one time I come in at about, I don't know, 6 or 7 in the morning, and he's asleep under under one of the Lightworks editing machines. So look at that, oh, there's Moby. Okay, let him sleep. So you were living in that editing space.
Yeah, I mean, I'd never been around. I didn't know that's how creative projects got made. Because up until that point, when I was in film school, it was just like a couple of guys with a Bolex or a Super 8 camera, or like making my own music. It was just like me in a little loft in New York, and being introduced to this world of like legitimate, like hundreds and hundreds. And I remember then visiting you when you were doing pre-production on Ali, and I was like, what is this compound? Like, there's Will Smith in one room, like practicing boxing, and in another room with like all like. It was so overwhelming to me. Well, thank you for sitting down.
You. This is like
I've had these existential thematic questions for 30 years, and now I have a little better understanding.
Good.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's terrific to see you.